It doesn't matter what financing you use. Nobody's going out to buy financing because they love the financing. They're going out because they're trying to buy this business and they want some other outcome for their life. They want freedom and autonomy. They want to create some financial flexibility for their future. I don't want other people to miss out on the opportunity and the personal growth and the freedom and autonomy that comes from taking ownership of your life, which is really what business ownership is.
It's interesting to me how many individuals don't even know that this is a thing or that it exists. It's like, wow, if someone who literally spent years in financial services and in that industry doesn't know about it, there's got to be a ton of people that have no idea that this is a thing.
The power of business is the power of leverage because you only have so much time. Confidence doesn't come from results. What I found is confidence comes from knowing that when you're in a new situation and you don't know how to do it, that you've done that enough times and figured it out along the way, that you're just not as worried about it.
Jeremy is the CEO of Guidant Financial, which is one of the largest names and providers of funding for franchise buyers, franchisees, and small businesses in general. Guidant has provided, get this, over $3 billion in funding to over 21,000 individuals, and they now have over 140 employees. But during the 2008 recession, their business was on the brink of bankruptcy. So, although we talk about funding in this episode and we dive into how to use your 401k or retirement money to fund your business goals through what's called a Rob's plan, which is Guidant was one of the innovators of that service and solution. But I really wanted to pick Jeremy's brain on how to build successful businesses. I mean, he co-founded this from scratch with his business partner, and he's now built multiple successful businesses and has been a highly effective CEO. So, they say proximity is power. And whenever you get to learn from someone who's further ahead than you, especially in business, you want to pay attention and listen because it could be a game changer for you and your business. Now, if you want to buy a franchise in the next 12 months, you should check out my free franchise masterclass at franchiseempire.com/masterclass. And if you want to work with me and my team on finding or buying a franchise or resale business, then you can go to franchiseempire.com/check territory and you can schedule a free call to see what's available in your area. The link is also in the description below. With that said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Franchise Empire Show. They say Rome wasn't built in a day, and building your empire doesn't happen overnight. My name is Tarek Johnson, and owning franchises is what helped me go from employee to employer and start building my empire for my family. So this podcast is for you, the empire builders. For those of you who want to build something that stands the test of time. This is for those of you who are crazy enough to believe that you can make the dream in your head come to life. This podcast is all about bringing you real people who are building real empires so you can get inside their mind and heart and get proven strategies and actionable insights that will catapult you to build, grow, and scale your empire. Welcome to the Franchise Empire Show. I have here Jeremy Ames, who is the co-founder and CEO of Guidant Financial. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate the invite, Tarek.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was telling you before we started recording that I was pretty excited for this. Partly because Guidant, I think, is probably the biggest or one of the biggest names in, at least specifically in the franchise funding community. And we've had a number of clients that have worked with Guidant. I've worked with some of your colleagues before. I was kind of telling you, um, but what I thought was interesting is that you built Guidant with $10,000, a laptop, and you guys now have over 140 employees, and you've gotten business owners over $3 billion in funding. When you started it, did you imagine that it would grow to something this grand?
Yes and no. I think the true answer is I don't think I could have predicted that this was where it was going to go. We had these grand visions of how big the business could be, but the reality is, I mean, we serve over 9,000 customers actively on a regular basis. That scale is just, it would have been insane to think about 9,000 companies, 100,000 plus employees across the US. Um, it's been a really fun journey and a long road, 20 plus years at this point.
I'm sure. So what was take us back to that time. You're sitting down, right? And you're concocting this idea of I want to start a funding company. How does that work, and what's your goal when you're thinking about it? What's your vision at that point in time?
It sounds like you haven't heard the origin story because it's very different and not nearly as an intentional as planned out.
No, I haven't.
So my first business that I ever started was a real estate company, and we specialized in doing sort of full cradle to grave, helping people get into investment real estate. So for people who had never done it before, it's like, how do you find what you want to invest in? How do you have the tools and resources to manage that and find the right way to maximize cash flow on it? And so we did that. And in the process of running that business, I met my longtime business partner, David Nilsson. And at the time, David was doing some raw land development. And so we teamed up on a couple of projects. One of the projects was subdividing this larger plot of land into subplots so that we could put housing on each of those. And at the time, our strategy was if you put down a concrete foundation and then you secured a mobile home to it, you could get the fact that it was a mobile home removed off of title. And so you went from mobile home financing, which was this much, to now Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, any of the other qualified funding. So that was our strategy. And our strategy for funding this was, hey, we're going to subdivide each of these plats and then we're going to fundraise for them like dominoes. So the second that we have the fundraising to do one, we're just going to get it started, and so on and so forth. And so we went and met with these attorneys to set up entities for each of these subplats that we were going to fundraise for. And they said, hey, have you thought about using self-directed retirement accounts? And we said, what are you talking about? And they gave us an education about this idea that you could use retirement funds to invest in these alternative assets. And so we went out to our network and ended up getting about 2/3 of the funding for this project, the totality of the project, through self-directed IRAs. And in the process, we figured out something. One, all the companies out there that helped people do this didn't speak English. They were bank custodians and attorneys. And so they weren't particularly friendly for figuring out what to do and how it needed to work. And the second thing we realized was no one knew about this. I mean, we were deep in the real estate investment community and we had no idea this even existed. So we saw an opportunity, or thought we saw an opportunity to start a company. And that was really the original genesis of Guidant. And we started to do the business funding about 6 months into the business, because really what broke through the business for us was advertising on Google. In that stage, advertising on Google was really early, but it enabled us to find these needles in a haystack of people that wanted to invest in these alternative assets using retirement funds. But about 10% of the people that wanted to invest in a business that they were going to actively be a part of, like a franchise. And you can't do that inside of a self-directed IRA. And so we had this pre-programmed, communication that we would give to people, telling them the reason that they can't do that. And one of the initial leads we were talking to said, well, yeah, I can. I've been working with this CPA and here's what he told me, and yada, yada, yada. We asked a few more questions. We got the information, and then we went and looked it all up. And we're like, well, this seems legitimate. And legitimate enough that we went out and hired an ERISA attorney and said, we want you to dig into this and tell us how this works. Does this work? And, is there a way to make this work? Because we think it's really compelling if there's a way that people can use retirement funds to invest in companies that they're going to actively be a part of building. And the attorney came back after his review and said, yeah, it's legitimate. Here's some things I don't like about what this particular CPA was saying. Here's some things I would take into consideration that he's not talking about. And we said, that sounds great. We'd like to offer you a job. And so we recruited this attorney to come on and help us build this out. And that just came to dominate what we do as a company over the years, and really the thing that we were most passionate about. So about 12 years ago, we sold off the IRA side of the business to really double down and focus on these small business customers and really the totality of the needs for people to get set up and get set up successfully. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what financing you use. Nobody's going out to buy financing because they love the financing. They're going out because they're trying to buy this business and they want some other outcome for their life. They want freedom and autonomy. They want to create some financial flexibility for their future. And it's just, what we sell is a tool. And so we want to find more ways to help people do that successfully to get to the outcome they envisioned.
So our team have looked into a few hundred franchises and put together a list of 5 low-cost franchises that all make $1 million or more and that have a proven track record of both happy and profitable franchisees. So if you have a net worth of at least $150,000 and you want to see if the territory that you want is still available for any of these franchises, then you can go to franchiseempire.com/check territory. All right, let's get back to the episode. Yeah, interesting. So was Rob's, and you're talking about Rob's, of course. So was Rob's not a thing at that point? Was it not widely
It was
known
a
and
thing.
accepted?
Well, what this attorney came back after his review and said, hey, this thing has been legal since ERISA was passed in 1974. And he gave us lots of different ideas of how this had been implemented by different attorneys, but most of it was really structured for high net worth people who were working with, very large deals. In fact, I believe that one of the original PayPal founders, for example, used retirement funds as part of an investment in that company.
Was that Peter Thiel, right?
Yeah, ended up with $1 billion IRA at the end of the day. So it existed, it just wasn't widely known, and it wasn't really structured in a way that was designed to be accessible for your average individual aspiring entrepreneur out there that's going out to buy a small business like a franchise.
Interesting. So were you guys the innovators of really creating wide stream and mainstream awareness for Rob's?
See, now you're getting into the whole debate. I'm sure there is at least one other company out there that will have a different way that they think about it. I don't actually know who is responsible for getting it out of the mainstream, but what I can tell you is that we built our business going consumer direct originally. And any of the other companies that were out there at the time, and I think there was only one or two others, they were focused just in the franchise channel where they were working with franchisors or franchise consultants. So do I believe that we were the ones who really sort of built more consumer direct awareness? Yeah, that was our intention. And that certainly was how we built the company originally.
And where did the term Rob's come from? Was that around before? Did it come around after?
That came from a 2008 IRS memorandum that came out, Rollovers for Business Startups. At that time, we had probably 2,500 plans and had one plan audited the entire history of the company. And so the IRS issued this memorandum and they talked about the fact that they had audited some of these plans and they had found some issues, really silly things like someone going out and moving their money and then buying a Maserati and trying to write that off as a business expense. We're looking at that. We're going, that's not our clients. That's not how we're structured. And we're not even sure they've even seen any of our client files. So that kicked off a multi-year process of us getting much more invested with our clients in connecting with the IRS. So since that day when the memorandum came out, we have offered as part of what we do on the 401k administration side, we do IRS audit representation is essentially built into what people get from us on the administration side.
Interesting. Now, in a little bit, I want to dive into some of your entrepreneurial journey because you've been through some roller coasters and some challenging times. So I think that that's a really fascinating part of the conversation that I know that I'll personally be interested in. So I think, others will be interested in it. But, for the folks listening right now who may feel a little bit lost, like, well, what exactly is Rob's? How does that work? Can you just explain at a high level, number one, what is Rob's? What do you guys do at Guidant? Who do you serve? And then we can kind of roll from there.
Yeah. So rollovers for business startups, it's You probably know that you can buy Microsoft and Yahoo stock inside your retirement plan, right? That's what most people have. They have some index of mutual funds or ETFs or whatever. But the guidelines, the way they are written, allow for investments in a whole host of other things. And there's a very specific exemption that's built in that guides both ESOPs, which are employer stock ownership plans, like Winco Foods, for example, is a huge ESOP that lots of people who are employees have stock ownership in. But it's the same set of guidelines essentially that govern what we do with rollovers for business startups. And it allows for people to invest in a small business and retain those retirement funds as a retirement account. So essentially, your retirement account is becoming a part owner in this business. And what that allows you to do, typically, if you were to go out and take your retirement funds out of your retirement account, you're going to pay taxes, penalties, and taxes, and you're probably going to pay taxes at the highest clip. So you might be out 50% of your money. So if you've got $300,000, you pull out 300,000, you're going to end up with 150. The difference in this structure is that if you meet certain requirements transactionally, and then you maintain certain requirements on an ongoing basis, you can keep those as a retirement asset. It's kind of like becoming your own angel investor in a way, in that your retirement plan becomes an investor. And so when you build up the company and sell it at some point, those funds from that ownership of the retirement plan go back into the retirement plan, and they're still tax deferred or tax free based on what type of retirement account you have, and you go from there.
Yeah, it's interesting to me how many individuals don't even know that this is a thing, or that it exists. I mean, my background, I had my investment licenses for 15 years, and even as a financial advisor, we weren't taught about ROBS, that it existed, and naturally, why would we? Because the goal of an advisor is to build, assets under management, and it wouldn't really work out in that regard with people then using those money to go into businesses. But when I don't know that even after when we bought our first franchise back in 2015 that I even knew about ROBS. So it's like, wow, if someone who literally spent years in financial services and in that industry doesn't know about it, there's got to be a ton of people that have no idea that this is a thing. Where are you seeing the, I guess, mainstream awareness now of ROBS overall, and how do we get the word out more so that people can avoid, because I've had conversations with folks who had already made the distribution, from their retirement account, and they're less than 59 and a half years old. I'm going, "Oh no, I wish you could, there was a different way you could have done this that probably would have been more advantageous."
Yeah. So how do we get the word out? I don't know. Things like this that we're doing right now is just getting in front of different audiences. What we do is pretty niche when you think of it, right? Because when you take the whole population of people and the percentage that end up moving forward in running or buying a small business, and then you take the percentage that have enough retirement funds where that's something they want to look at, it just ends up being a subset of that. So it's not the kind of thing where for us it would ever pay to advertise on the side of a bus driving through New York City, right? There's not enough applicability that's there. So really, I think it's just um, educating key influencers and educators in the small business community, because that's most likely where people are going to end up before they're going down the path of committing to, hey, this is something I want to do, and I got to figure out how.
Yeah. And so for another area that I years ago wasn't too familiar with, was the self-directed IRA space. I actually wind up in my last kind of corporate financial job, um, worked at a trust company. That's all we did was self-directed IRAs, and I oversaw the institutional side of the business, so working with, private equity companies, etc. But did you guys at one point, you said you sold off your IRA business. Did you guys also have a self-directed IRA business at Guidant as well?
We did, yeah. We partnered with a couple different custodians. We even got fairly far down the path of filing to be a custodian, and just realized that it was pulling the company in two very different directions to serve two very different customers. And we had to make a decision, like, what did we want to be about? And our heart was really on the small business side. That's the part that's changed the lives for me and my business partner. Like, I didn't go to school to be an entrepreneur. I went to school and studied to be a teacher, and then I dropped out because I hated my student teaching. So I feel incredibly lucky that the dominoes fell in a way that got me into my first business. Because I think if you replayed my life 1,000 times, maybe I end up here two or three.
Mm.
And that makes me sad because I don't want to. I don't want other people to miss out on the opportunity and the personal growth and the freedom and autonomy that comes from taking ownership of your life, which is really what business ownership is. It's recognizing sort of your power to create value in the world. And I guess one of the things I like to share with people is the power of business is the power of leverage, because you only have so much time. And a business is the ultimate leverage. And whether that's using capital or people or resources, that's what a business gives you. And if you're not using the leverage of a business to build your own wealth, you are the leverage for somebody else.
That is a really, really interesting point. So you were an entrepreneur before Guidant, right?
Yeah, for about 8 months. So it was not a long journey starting. I've since started and failed at many things, Tarek. So we can talk about that if you want, and the things learned along the journey there. But yeah, I think once you get a taste of the freedom, it's hard to go back. I can't imagine going back and working. It gives me hives just thinking about it.
Hey, so if you want to figure out if you should buy a franchise and learn the fastest and easiest way to figuring out the best franchise to buy and everything you need to know about the process, then you'll want to go get access to our Franchise Buyers Academy. In our Franchise Buyers Academy, you'll get a behind the scenes look into specific franchises and exactly how much money they are making. You'll get simple formulas for finding money-making franchises and a blueprint on how to scale them into a franchise empire that can be sold for a lot of money later on. You'll be able to finally answer the question on, should I buy a franchise? Now you can get access at franchiseempire.com/FBA. Now let's get back to the episode. Yeah, I know where you're at. Well, I think talking about the failures would be interesting because when I look back, so I'm curious what your perspective is on this. I remember, so from the ages of 18 to 27, I tried starting 9 different businesses, uh, combination of clothing line, landscaping business, tax lien investing business, all sorts of things, and kept failing, 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 failing. I didn't understand a lot of things about myself at that point. Um, but then finally buying my first franchise was the catalyst. I just kind of needed a blueprint to start, but I in that time I would compare myself to other people. I would watch other entrepreneurs building businesses and I would think, what's wrong with me? What's wrong? Am I inferior in some way? Can I ever do this? Can I be an entrepreneur? And it created a tremendous amount of doubt, depression, all sorts of, suffering in a sense. So for you, when you look back at the roller coaster of your entrepreneurial journey, what would you say has been the most challenging experience that you've been through? And how did you get to the other side, both mentally and emotionally and tactically?
Man, for me, it was probably 2008, 2009 timeframe. And the reason is because in the early stages, the first few companies that I started, I mean, even the first three or four, like at that point in time, like I was too dumb to know any different. I didn't have much to lose. So it was easy to just go all in and try and figure it out on the way. By the time 2008, 2009 rolled around, I had lots to lose. And suddenly the world changed almost overnight. And we had solved problems over the years in the business by just throwing more people and more resources at it, because we hadn't built our skills as entrepreneurs enough yet to know how to think smartly about those things. And that works when you're growing at a really incredible clip. But then overnight, when things shift, there was, for us, it took many, many months for us to recognize the reality of, hey, this is not just going to magically get better next month. The world is not just going to be in a place where everyone's got a job and the economy's back functioning at a good level and the stock market's in a good place. So we had to make some tough decisions. And I remember at one point, Tarek, we were on a conference call with a group of attorneys, and we were trying to explore, like, what would it look like to do a bankruptcy reorganization, right? Because at the time we were managing payables like on a weekly basis, like who can we not pay versus who we need to pay, right? Managing that sort of cash flow thing. So we're talking to these attorneys and they're giving us all the details. And I remember at the end of the call, I leaned over and I said, well, can you guys help us understand what is this going to cost and how does the structure of that payment work? And they said, well, for us to get started, you're going to have to give us a $50,000 retainer. And I kind of laughed and I was like, Dave, you realize, like, we can't afford to go bankrupt. Like, that's ironic, if anything. But it was really a blessing because I think coming out of that call, it was just like, there's no magical bailout that's going to happen here. We just got to make the hard decisions to cut back and get really, really smart about where we're at. And that's what we did. And that was probably
But
my
how do you
hardest.
I'm sorry to interrupt. How do you deal with that, the emotional and mental pressure of that in the moment? What are you when you're laying your head on your pillow and you're worrying, what are you saying to yourself when you're wanting to quit and give up? What's your internal dialogue like? And how are you mentally getting yourself through it day by day by day? I mean, that's a grind.
Totally. I think about this often. I think most days when I'm working out, there will be a point in the workout where I'm like, oh, I just want to be done. I just want to stop doing this set. I just want to stop doing these reps. And my mantra is just one more rep, one more rep. I learned this actually. I did this Navy SEAL Fit training that was like a 13-hour thing where we went to San
Is it
Diego.
seal fit?
SEAL Fit, yeah, and you just get
You
pummeled
did
for the whole
seal
thing.
fit?
I did SEAL Fit, yeah.
Nice.
I did it with like 5 entrepreneur buddies, and one of the lessons I still remember from that is they take you on this run. They don't tell you how long this run is going to be. They're just saying, okay, now I want you guys to run as hard as you can to this next rock. And then you run as hard as you can to your next rock. And you're just hoping, like, is this it? And then it's like, okay, now you're going to run as hard as you can to the next rock. And then you just run as hard as you can to the next rock. And they just keep doing this to you relentlessly. I don't even remember how long it was, but at some point you just give up and you're just present to the moment. And it was like, all right, next rock, let's go make it happen. So that's the mentality that I've developed over the years. But I will tell you, I don't know if I would have gotten through it if it weren't for the network that I was a part of. So I joined this group called the Entrepreneurs Organization in the beginning of 2005 when we first qualified, because you have to pass $1 million in revenue threshold in order to qualify.
And is that a million aggregate or annually?
A million annually. So in a 12-month period. So we had just crossed that threshold. We joined immediately. And they put you in this peer group of people who are in non-competitive industries, and you meet every month. And every month, you've got to do this sort of reflection that tries to pull out, like, what's the top 5% and what's the bottom 5% of what's going on in your world, and really dig into what is relevant about that. And it teaches you to understand not the surface level issue, but like, what's the real thing that's going on underneath that's getting in the way. Because the surface level issue might be like, I don't know how we're going to get through this and pay this thing. But the real underlying issue is, I'm scared I'm going to lose everything and that my wife is going to leave me and no one's going to love me anymore. I mean, like, deep things inside that are the things that keep you up at night. And having a group of people that I was meeting with regularly that I could talk to about any of those things in a safe environment was huge, because I didn't even always feel safe being able to unload at home, because I didn't want my wife freaking out. She was, already, so worried about, we had our first baby at the end of 2008. So we were in the cave when this was all going down.
Wow. That is that's interesting. What's fascinating to me is, how many of the successful entrepreneurs that I know that utilize fitness as a conduit in a way to build up their mental toughness, and it becomes an identity thing. And as a past athlete, and I run Spartan races pretty much every 3 months or so.
You hear all the
Um,
metal in the background?
yeah, yeah, and I hate running. I really hate running, actually, a lot. When I used to wrestle back in the day and coaches would make us run, I was so bad at running that I'd be in the back with the heavyweights when we'd go on, like, long distance runs. That's how bad I'd be at it. But, I know it's similar for me in terms of pushing myself in the gym or training or whatever it is. I play, and actually I'm going to get an MRI later today because I might have a torn meniscus, which is a bummer from playing ball. So I've been hobbling around the last few days, but I play pickup bat. I did play up until a few days ago. I did play pickup basketball a couple nights a week with a bunch of guys at the YMCA, and a lot of these guys are way more talented than me in terms of, playing ball. It just is what it is. And uh but they'll pick me to be on their team because they're like, "You have a ton of energy," and they'll always put me on whoever, like, the most athletic or energetic person is.
Go annoy them.
Yeah, and it's like, but the thing is, what I always tell them is like, I don't have any more energy than you do. I'm just used to embracing the pain." And what I know about myself is that I'm usually not the most talented, I'm usually not the smartest. So I've just learned that I have to outwork everyone just to even try to get to a baseline of where some other people are. So have you found that to be, true for you, or what do you feel like you've had to compensate for, in the business world?
I think it's taken me a lot of years to embrace that my superpower is the superpower of the tortoise. And it's because, when I started running businesses, I had this like idea of what I was supposed to be doing. I was supposed to be working 80 hours a week. I was supposed to be bleeding on the floor and sleeping in the office. I was supposed to be um, pushing the envelope at all these things. And it took me a long time to recognize like, that's not what I'm good at. What I'm good at is I can just do the little things consistently over and over again for a long period of time. So Seal Fit's a great example. The first 2 hours of the Seal Fit were the most miserable of all of them because they take you through all like the push-ups, the running, the pull-ups, all the things, right? They're just destroying you. But the rest of the day was relatively easy for me because it's just you just keep putting one front in front of the other. And I think, when you talk about fitness, that resonates with me from the standpoint of fitness is, first of all, if you don't have energy to show up in your world, you're not going to be able to do anything. So fitness is like one of the core foundations. Like if you're not taking care of your body, like you are doing a disservice to your relationships, you're doing a disservice to your job or your business, you're doing a disservice to the impact you can make in the world. So I just think that part's a no-brainer. But what it teaches you is this consistency of doing the hard things because that's really what success in business is about. It's like how long can you consistently do the thing that's going to build up compound interest to create the outcomes that you want? Because all success in life comes down to compound interest. That's true whether it's money or it's true whether it's your time. Like you can tell me what you're investing your time in today, and I can tell you what your life is probably going to look like 10 years from now. And if it's 4 hours of Netflix at night and, chilling, then it's probably not going to be the life that you envision and dream about.
Yeah, it's so true. And I say entrepreneurship is it's basically like how long can you endure pain for? I at least that's been my experience. Like, how long will you stick it out through the uncertainty of, right? Not when is this exercise going to end? Like the SEAL Fit experience, like you have no idea when it's going to end. And, you have this hypothesis that it's going to work if I keep working hard and showing up. Maybe it'll work, but maybe it doesn't. And so I think a lot of people, not I think, I know based on hundreds of conversations with aspiring entrepreneurs or people that, have just launched their business, the fear of failure is so crippling because the idea of going backwards or being embarrassed or and as you alluded to, a lot of this stuff stems from childhood wounds and things that we experience. For someone listening right now where they want so badly to become a successful entrepreneur, build their business, but they're feeling a little bit paralyzed by fear or stuck in analysis paralysis, what do you say to that person?
I think the biggest gap to people going down the path of business ownership is their need for certainty. Because owning a business is really like confidence doesn't come from results. What I found is confidence comes from knowing that when you're in a new situation and you don't know how to do it, that you've done that enough times and figured it out along the way that you're just not as worried about it. It's not a question of like, will you get there? It's often a question of how long is this going to take? Like, how many reps am I really going to have to put in? And for me, it took a mindset shift to get to that place because I made it way too hard on myself in the early stages of the business. All pain comes from missed expectations. So for me, it was starting the business. My expectation was we're going to grow this thing really big. We're going to sell it in 3 to 5 years. And then I'm going to go buy an island somewhere in the Caribbean and I'm just going to go retire. I'm going to drink Mai Tais and my life is going to be amazing. That was what was in my head. Um, what I've come to learn over the years is that I don't ever want to retire. And it's not because I need to have this particular job or be working on this thing. It's just because I recognize like I love to build and create things. It fulfills a part of me, and I'm always going to need to feed a part of that in order to be my sort of whole self. And so when I think about, an entrepreneur who's feeling uncertain, it's like just start taking some small steps to do some things. And that can be investing in yourself. Like if you're not regularly working out or doing some kind of fitness thing, that's an easy place to start. Just start casting votes for the future person you want to be and show up and show yourself, I can do things that feel hard. And in my view, things are hard because the results don't come quick. Like when we do things, the work may be difficult, but if we get results early, we don't call those things hard. I'm like, oh, that's no big deal. I'll do that all day long. What's hard is when we have to do it for a long period of time and we don't know actually how long we have to do it before we're going to get to the total outcome that we want. And that is the blessing and the curse of raising kids. It's the blessing and curse of starting a business. It's the blessing and curse of building anything that is sort of long term valuable. Because I just found for me, at least, that nothing that has the real meaningful long term rewards that I want is something that I can get with short term shortcuts. Like I've got to be willing to do the work. And I think as business owners, we often make it too hard on ourselves because of our expectations of how fast things need to happen, or we're somehow broken, as opposed to having the mentality of like, I just haven't figured it out yet. Okay, so that didn't work. What's up next? In our business, we have a principle called fall in love with the problem, not the solution. And the reason is because the solutions don't always work. But if you fall in love with the problem, then when the solution doesn't work, you just next man up. What's the next solution that we're going to try and put in place to solve this problem? And it's the same thing with the business. And I think once you switch that mentality, you start looking at your job differently. When you stop thinking like, oh, I just have to grind it out for the next 2 years to get to this point and then life is going to be better. It's like, no, this is the reality of where I'm at. How do I make where I'm at enjoyable? And that just becomes an exercise in trying to figure out what is it I'm good at? What lights me up? What can I do uniquely that's going to make this business more valuable? And what do I need to let go of? Because there's somebody out there that loves to do that thing that I don't love to do. Or, I'm a big believer in this concept of a work budget, which is, I think, one of the things that can happen when you start a small business is that it can suck up every available time you have. In business, there are always more things to do than there are time and resources to do it. So the main exercise of running a business is choosing, it's prioritization. And what happens if you're not intentional about this sort of work budget idea, is it will just suck up all your time. And it can suck up all your time. I could spend 10 hours a day, Tarek, in email if I wanted to. 100%. But I hate email. And you know why I hate email? Because email is where everyone else's goals and objectives and desires live, not mine. But so I actually have to develop, I've had to develop a system for how I carve time and space out to get away from all the reactive things that I think I need to do to focus on the things that are really going to drive forward to the outcomes that I want. And the amazing thing is, when I put a constraint on the rest of that time, I figure out how to get what's most important done in that time.
Interesting. And how do you plan that out, like, tactically? Is that time blocking? Like, walk us through your process.
So I use something I call focus sessions, and I try and book at least 2 hours of focus time every morning throughout the week. And then I have a scorecard where I track these things, but I try and get, I don't know, 13 or 14 focus sessions in a week. And the whole point of my focus sessions, these are 30-minute sprints, and they're on important but not urgent things and things that are needle movers. So it might be writing, it might be creating strategic plan, it might be prepping for a meeting where I've got 12 of my leaders coming in and I need to make sure everyone's really clear on what's going forward. Um, that has been a game changer for me to say that time is there and I'm going to use it for those things and I'm going to figure out how to resolve everything else in the time that's left. And with that, it forces it forces me to say no to things. It forces me to drop some balls that probably I don't need to be juggling in the first place.
Yeah, interesting. And you had a co-founder, business partner. Is David?
David, yep.
Yeah. And, how did that impact the growth of the business? And every time I talk to entrepreneurs who had a business partner, I ask them, um, "Do you think you could have done it without the person?" And they always say no. So I don't ask that anymore. But what I'm interested in learning is, how did it impact the growth of the business? How did you guys take inventory of what your natural skill sets were versus what you may have wanted to be doing in the business, and kind of divide and conquer? And what were the roles between the 2 of you guys?
Oh my God, we've done it so many different ways, Tarek. We've done co-CEOs, we've done CEO and president, we've done one of us as CEO and one of us external to the business a couple different times. Like we have been all over the board in terms of how we have managed this. Could I have done it without him? Probably not. At least not the extent to which it is today. I mean, there's something about complementary skill sets in a business that matters if you can work through the relationship side. And to me, this is no different than a marriage. It's like if you got aligned values and you have aligned goals of where you want to get, then you just got to work through the challenges and the triggers and the differences in how you approach problems. And how did we divide and conquer? Well, I think one of the things we learned pretty quickly about both of us is that we need to have ownership of something. So, what did not work was for us to collaborate on everything. Like it needed to be clear in this area, you own it, and I'm here to be a support, and you can bounce ideas off me, and I can give you my feedback, but ultimately you're going to decide. And in this area over here, I'm going to own, and we switch those areas around. So both of us have overseen every single part of the company at different times throughout the history of the company. And he's actually not actively in the business anymore. He started, we spun off a company about 3 years ago that has since grown like gangbusters, and he's running that full time. But I wouldn't trade that part for the world. I mean, having someone there to go through those difficult times with has been invaluable for me. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would have been able to get the same place on my own because I think there are ways that he pushed me. And I would say the same thing about my wife. I think there are ways that she has pushed me to grow in areas that I needed to grow and ways where I have felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment because I've been able to add value to her. And I think the same thing is true with my business partner and the businesses that we've owned and run together.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a business hack, right? An unintentional business hack, having um the right partner in life, the right spouse. I know that my wife and I will be 10 years in September, and she's smart and just supportive and awesome. And I still remember that conversation of saying, "Hey, I want to take 300 grand out of our home to start a juice bar franchise," and that didn't go over too smoothly initially. But overall, she's been that came from the history of me jumping from business idea to business idea, never following through on anything, right? So it compounded into that overall. But in order to have built the business that you've built, it obviously requires having build a really great team. So you must have done that, and I've met some of the people on your team, and they're awesome. What what do people need to know listening about building a team in a business?
Maybe I'll focus on a couple of things that I think took me too long to learn, and so maybe other people can short track their path to this. Um, One is I used to think in order to be respected as a leader, I needed to be highly capable at everything. And so I would try and show that I was willing to do everything that I would ever ask someone else to do, and that I was going to be equally good at it or better. And what I've come to learn is that in the same way we want freedom and autonomy and purpose, so do all the people that work with us every single day. And part of where they get that is knowing that they're doing something that's adding unique value, and they're doing it at a level that is really great. And so, I used to feel bad because I would have something I don't like to do. And so giving that to someone else felt like I was giving them a burden. And it took me a while to realize, but wait, there are people in the world who that is their favorite thing to do. So I'm actually giving them a gift. And really, all they need from me is gratitude and acknowledgement. Like, hey, you're amazing. Thank you so much for doing that. That is something I struggle with, and you're exceptional at it. So I think that's one thing. If I could go back, I would have spent a lot more time in the early stages working on self awareness of where I'm strong and where I'm weak, and just owned it. Like, I don't have to be great at everything. I don't have to try and grit it out and pretend like I enjoy or that I am capable at something that I'm just not great at. Because every strength we have has a corresponding weakness, right? If you're a great strategic thinker, guess what you're probably not going to be great at doing? Crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. Like, your brain's just wired differently. But I think a lot of times, at least in the early stage of the business, I would look at those people that were T crossers and I dotters, and I would get super annoyed with them because I'd come in with the next best idea, Tarek, and it was this amazing idea that was going to game change the business, and then they just crap all over it. And it used to drive me so crazy until I realized that actually it's a huge benefit for me because I'm an idea guy, but my gap is that I don't always see all the micro things and the side effects that something can have. I've come to love those people now. Those are the first people I want to take my idea to because they're going to tell me exactly all the holes that I need to plug for this idea to work, or they're going to expose that there's something that's just a game changing red flag so I don't waste any more time spinning up my efforts on it. And just that mindset shift changed everything for me to, instead of feel like these people are fighting against me, be like, these are the people who complete me. This is my Jerry Maguire moment. Like, I want lots of T crosser I dotters in my world. Like, they make it happen.
Mm. Now, a lot of small business owners, and something that I still am challenged with to this day, is delegating. And especially if someone's a small business where maybe they have 5, 10, 15 employees. um for folks that are maybe type A perfectionists, want things done right, how did you learn that ability and skill set to delegate, and really empowering people around you to be able to do the work essentially, and allow you the time to then go focus on what you're good at or what is the highest leverage in the business?
I think this is another one that came from self awareness because I am someone who's wired to rebel against anyone trying to control me. So when my wife says, "Hey, can you fold the towels?" And then I fold the towels, and she comes over and she says, "You did them wrong. You need to fold them like this." This rage that builds in me. And I realize in those moments, like that's exactly what I did for the first 10 years of the business. I'd hand someone the towels. I wouldn't give them any direction other than, "Hey, you need to fold the towels," and you totally own that. And then they do it, and I'd be like, "No, that's not the way to do it." And then they'd feel horrible about the way that they delivered it. I had to change my perspective to I have to get out of the how and focus on defining the what. So the what is the towels need to get folded. If there's some particular way the towels need to get folded, then I have to go, and it's important that they're done in this way because of this reason. I trust you to figure it out. For me, what's changed is my relationship to the words ownership and accountability. The word accountability actually gives me hives the way people use it because they use it often as this weapon that you're going to wield against people. We just need people to be more accountable. And I don't believe accountability is something you give or hold someone else to. Accountability is someone taking ownership themselves. And they can't do that unless you're giving them the freedom to truly own it. And that creates a burden for us as leaders because we have to be really clear on what's important and why in order to let go of the how. So I think for me, what I've learned is that most of my early problems with delegation came because I wasn't spending the time to get clear on what really mattered and why it mattered. And so when I gave it to somebody, it was more like, here, you go do all the work, and then I'll point out to you why it's wrong. And that just drives people away and makes them not want to own something. And then what happens is it creates this cycle of they keep doing things and coming back to check with you 45 times. I mean, I've even had to build a framework and a structure into our leadership team meetings that makes it really clear as issues come up for me to bring clarity to who owns this issue. Because otherwise, what will happen is I will get involved in too many things that actually take ownership away from people. And I think as business leaders and owners, we like to think, hey, we're just another guy here. I'm just going to throw out some ideas in this meeting. You guys do with it what you want to. But the reality is everything that comes out of our mouth gets translated differently. I might share an idea that I have, not because I think it's the right idea, but because it occurred to me. It popped into my head. And then someone thinks that's what Jeremy wants. And then they go out and deliver on it. And I'm like, why did you do that? Like, this doesn't make sense at all. It doesn't actually accomplish the outcome we want. And I realize I'm just throwing out ideas. I'm not actually really defining what success looks like at the end of the day. And then being willing to let go and say, I trust you to get that done.
So awesome. Well, we're running out of time. There's so many more questions that I would like to ask you. So maybe we'll have to do a round two at some point because this is all like amazing. Um, but what does when you think of Guidant, what you guys are doing, supporting entrepreneurs and business owners, what what do you want to be remembered for? Like, what do you want your legacy to be as an organization and as an individual?
Maybe I'll start with the individual piece. What really lights me up is seeing people step into their power and the ownership they have to create the kind of life that they want. And that's true whether it's starting a business or that's true whether you want to go to the Pokemon World Championships, which is something my son is just about to qualify for. I have no interest in Pokemon. He's super into it. Awesome. I can totally support that. Uh, so I love that part. And when I think about where that translates to the business, our whole mission as a company is to increase the number of people that succeed in small business. For me, I feel so lucky to have fallen into this as my career, my profession as an entrepreneur. And I want more people to find it and not have to miss out or just get lucky at one point because it's changed my life. I mean, it has forced me to become a better, more well rounded person. And, one thing I know for sure If I created a waiver for every new small business owner and told them all the things that they were signing up for that they were going to have to deal with, no one would sign that waiver if they read it. But it's going through those challenges that actually create the growth. It's where it gives you the opportunities to put in the reps and become a better version of yourself and have a better impact. And I think I thought when I was going into small business in the first place that it was all about the money. And I think what I've realized is, you know, money's nice. It certainly provides a level of comfort and a level of stability, but it gets old pretty quick from the standpoint of it can't give you fulfillment. Your fulfillment comes from that impact that you're having in the world and on other people. And a business is an amazing way to do that. It's an amazing way to get leverage for your time, to be creating those outcomes you want for yourself, but also creating some of those outcomes for other people out in the world. So I would love to see, right now we've helped 30,000 people start a business. We're maybe 1,500 to 1,800 a year. I'd love to see that number be 10,000 or 20,000 or 30,000. I just believe our country and our world would be a better place if more people were willing to step up and take ownership of their lives, because it will change you.
Yeah, it will change you 100%. Um, I've definitely experienced that, the life of being an entrepreneur. It's been so amazing. Well, hard, but amazing in terms of just looking back at the growth and the person that you have to become. I think Jim Rohn talks about that a lot, right? It's about who you become in the process, and I think that's the coolest part if you embrace it and you actually, become someone or something better. Um, so Jeremy, thanks so much for coming on, man. I really enjoyed it. I think we'll be hitting you up for a round two at some point because I have some other questions for you. But I'm sure everyone got a lot of value. Any parting words before we rock and roll?
No, just appreciate you bringing me on, and let me know if there's anything I can do to help your audience and your team. As you know, I'm passionate about helping people with small business. So if there's ways that I can help you expand that mission for yourself, love to do that.
Awesome. I appreciate that, man. Thanks so much.
Okay. Have a great day, man.
Hey, before we go, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please subscribe here on YouTube if you haven't already. And the biggest thank you that you could ever give me is to share this episode with someone who you think will benefit. That means that we can share this message with more people and hopefully positively inspire them like we have you. So thank you. And until next time, go build your empire.